What is up, guys? Wraec is here with a new video, and today I want to talk about Gerda, the newest hero, the current raid up hero. And maybe you've seen my summoning video today, ever since I have been testing her quite a lot. And today I want to tell you guys about my results and whether or not I think you should summon her or whether you want to wait for another hero in this season. So, first of all, what is Gerda? Gerda is a tank of the Mauler faction, and she has a very interesting ability that we may just want to check out in one of my gameplays. So here we just have a PvE gameplay. You can see her jumping right to the front over here and making this Hotspring that we already know from her in-game area. This Hotspring will heal your allies and your enemies, and while it heals your allies for much more than your enemies, keep in mind those enemies will recover a bit of HP, and this might be a problem if you are low on damage in your team. She is fairly tanky. Initially it didn't seem that way. Also, because she doesn't necessarily have too many abilities that add to her survivability. She can give herself a shield, which is rather nice, and she has a bit of CC. The CC in general felt rather weak, I have to say, though it is a nice thing to add to a character, as it also, of course, adds interruption. Her initial jump interrupts the enemy too, and for example, if you let her jump into the proximity of a Smokey, that Smokey will be interrupted and thus stop casting the ult, so that is something that you can use as well. The CC itself is at the beginning rather short, but through healing enemies it actually gets added time to it and goes up to 3 seconds duration, which is not bad at all. So in the end she can do some solid CC, which is not a bad thing to have on a character like this at all. The one thing to note for this character though is, well, we have a Mauler over here, and in this season Maulers have not been treated very kindly. Maulers had a great stand in the last seasons, were overall fairly strong, and in this season, well, have one of the faction skills that is regarded a little bit weaker, especially for PvP and PvE gameplay in talent trials. This can play a role whether or not your faction skill is really strong. For most part, people are not really aiming to build Mauler teams. For PvP, the most desirable teams are Wilder and Graveborn, probably Celestial Hypergene. For PvE, I argue for the most it's still Wilder, but sometimes you see a Lightbearer in there as well, because, well, it's Organ, he's doing well. So we have kind of the opposite situation of the last season, where in the last season every single hero that was from the Mauler faction already got 1 rank up in PvP tier list. In this season it's probably 1 rank down, and this season's specific viability is something that you want to keep in mind. It will add to the judgment of many people for this character, because they just don't want to use him. If you notice that you put a hero in your team more often, that you like putting him in your team, then you tend to judge better about the character and say that this character is a little bit stronger. So this season, probably the general sentiment towards this character will be that she is a little bit weaker. Is that necessarily the case? I think she's overall a solid tank. There is a little bit of a lack of competition here. The most used tanks in the Mauler faction, well, we have Antandra, and we have Lumont here as tanks in the faction. And I mean, we have to certainly add another very tanky hero if we talk about this faction, and this is of course Brutus. Brutus, mostly used as a tank against strong burst comps, is also in here. But I think in general, if you use or search for a tank for a season that might or might not come, in which Mauler is again a strong option, then she can be fairly interesting. She can be a decent hero. We can try to fight Andre with it. So I just made this team. To be honest, I didn't find any good team with her. It is a little bit of a problem just because she doesn't fit this meta. This meta is very fast. She's very slow. I mean, what does symbolize this more than the way her CC scales? Each time a target receives healing equal to 10% of the max HP or is healed 3 times by Gerda's Hotspring, sleep extends by 0.5 seconds, which is her CC, up to 3 seconds. The problem is now, well, we only heal by 0.5% of max HP, so in that sense it takes a while for this to actually scale, and this is a kind of a slow mechanic, while we are in the burst meta where it's super fast. Also, the whole thing of her like being in the front and just like protecting there doesn't really work. Her positioning is a little bit awkward. She has to jump to the front, and then the targeting of those enemies might change, the targeting lines might change. You can see right here is currently on the aimed at the Damien, but if you place her to the front of your team, look where she jumps. She almost jumps over to the enemy team, completely out of range for your own teammates, unless you play melee, which again is not meta. So we don't really have a melee meta at all at the moment. What we use is kind of what Andre has on the board. We have like Bonnie, we have like Siren, Telena's in the meta, Tazi's in the meta, everything that I have like at High Paragon is usually quite in the meta. And that is all ranged. Like the melee heroes just aren't there at the moment. And that is, of course, one reason for that is that the faction skills kind of buff range damage this season more than they do melee damage, and melee damage isn't really there. The only melee hero that we have is Harak, and he hardly would rely on any form of tank. He just is there to burst. So that is something to keep in mind. We can try to use her a little bit as a support healer by letting her jump pretty close to our team, by placing her pretty backmost. And we can see if that works out. I put Damien in there. We have a Paragon advantage just to bridge this gap from being basically in a non-meta situation. The good thing is in this situation she takes the Bonnie damage. So that is something that is rather nice. If that is enough for us to survive, that is another question. Because fighting a Siren and a Bonnie is like a horror combination in this season. That's just like absolutely OP, and no, even with a P4 Damien on the board, yeah, that just doesn't do it. And I mean, her tanking capabilities, okay, yeah, she did tank some things, but in the end, the damage still gets to you. We have range damage, we have AoE damage, we have passive damage this season, and none of that is really something that helps us a whole lot. In PvE, you have better tanks like Fresto, so yeah, I'm really struggling to find good use to her. And one more thing that I wanted to show you guys, and maybe as a finishing word for PvP, not this season. Definitely not this season. There will be no place for her, I think. There is no use in activating the faction skill tile for Mauler. And there is so you don't really need her. You just play Fresto, you play Thorin, you play better tanks than her. So there's just no need to summon her for PvP. If we talk PvE, I mean, if you have a Fresto, if you use the Fresto, let's be honest about this. So that is another thing. Or you go for CC, which arguably works better. One more thing that I wanted to show you is also a targeting thing. Maybe we go back into the PvP fight for Andre, and then I can explain that a little bit. Because the movement thing is a bit weird in that regard. What can happen, and I mean, she does, the targeting is decided at the beginning of the battle. So this Fresto will now target this Viperion, that is the thing. If she were to jump between them, and the Fresto was over here, and she would suddenly stand here, this Fresto would attack her. That works out as well. What can happen to you though is that this Fresto moves forward, your hero moves forward, and she jumps past the enemy hero, because she will always jump to this position. No matter if there is actually an enemy over here or over here, she will always go to this position. And I can show you a fight right now where this was actually a bit of a problem. So this was a team that I already showed. This is just like a little bit of a Mauler team. It worked decently well. For PvE it worked decently well, was quite alright, focusing on OD damage, focusing on the damage from Smokey, but you already saw it right here. She skipped past the Sharky that was moving forward, targeting the Smokey, and that left her in this position where the Sharky was already past her and attacking our team now for the remainder of the time until he's actually defeated. So, that is also something that can happen to you and makes the positioning ever so more difficult. Next thing, there are actually artifacts like Ice Guard Spell, and Ice Guard Spell requires you to be in the frontmost position. And it would be such a nice artifact for her to use if it wasn't for this mechanic that you would actually jump past the enemies and then allow the enemies to attack your team. Because then you could cast Ice Guard Spell on her and maybe make use of that. Though, let's be honest, in the end, I would still prefer to go with Thorin over her and put Ice Guard Spell on Thorin, because that is really, really nice. And then I thought, it's like a really cool team. Many people now say Elijah and Layla as a first Celestial Hypergen hero. Maybe people could build something like this team. And that was when I noticed that I had placed 3 A-tier Maulers in this team. And obviously for a beginner that really doesn't work, because that means you have to finish up on Coco, you have to finish up on Odie, and then you have to get Gerda before you can even play the team. So really doesn't work out overall as you're someone through multiple factions simultaneously. So the easier way to do this would be to just say, okay, I get Odie, I get Coco, and I get the tank from another faction. If that is just one copy of a Fresto, or maybe if that is like a Thorin or something, something, it doesn't really matter. They will all do the job in this situation. So even for that extent, that really doesn't work out. And for that, now we have covered most of the parts. Do I have to talk about Dream Realm? There is no Dream Realm for her. Like, you can maybe use her against the Clam, yeah, that would probably work. You would at least sacrifice her and then get the healing field, but it's not really worth it at all. She doesn't provide anything for it, so it's not worth really talking about Dream Realm. That's a no. And we talk about Noble Tavern and maybe the summoning priority, and we take a look at the wish list. We of course have the competition in the Mauler 80 faction, and I mean, obviously Odie and Coco are heroes I would prioritize over her, and then we can talk about the rest of the heroes that are in there. I prefer Antandra as a tank, just because she has better tank abilities, like 60% damage reduction. Overall, she has a far longer sustain through that, and is overall a lot tankier. I don't even want to know how many people already had a PvE enemy Antandra and just weren't able to beat her just because she had this knockdown, she had the shield gain, she's unaffected, she's everything. So I prefer Antandra over her, I have to say that right now. And if you already got like one copy of Brutus, you can delay her anyway. So probably I would go Odie, I would go Coco, and then I would argue Seth. I'll be honest, I would argue Seth. Soren you don't really need to. You can go Antandra, but if you have the first three, like I would say Antandra over her. Soren is a bit of a meme pick, but can be good in PvP. So depending on whether or not you want Soren, she's the 5th or 6th most or 6th ranked A-tier Mauler in my opinion. So that is insane. So first Odie, then Coco. Then I would say Seth, then Antandra, and then her, or then Soren, and then her, depending on whether or not you want to use Soren for PvP. Some people really like him. I personally think he's pretty cool. Didn't really get to use him so much. I'm waiting for like the Mauler hype season. But this rank in itself already tells you one thing, and that thing is you definitely don't want to do the rate up for her, because she is rather bad. That is sadly the case. Will she be interesting in the future? Maybe. When we get like the super Mauler-centric future and the super Mauler-centric teams, then I can use her and then I can see that. But if we get that, and if you then need her, that is a question that is far in the future. I think you want a hero that is pretty good right now. And right now, honestly, you have the option to do that. Siren is one of my most hyped heroes, in my opinion, one of the best heroes that we had in this season, and that we actually had in a long time. Ever since Bonnie, I would say. Bonnie was also a great PvP hero. He's a great PvP hero. He's not for PvE. You don't need him for PvE. But if you want a great PvP hero, there is Siren to summon, and you will get much more than for Gerda. So you can just take the easy way to just do the click over here, get a few Siren copies, be happy with it. So yeah, in that regard, I think Gerda stays true to be an easy pass. And as sad as that is, that is my judgment on her, my decision on her. And I hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't already, then definitely subscribe to this channel. Also check out the link in the description if you want some cheap dragon crystals. That is where I buy my dragon crystals, get a little bit of commission there. I don't know, you would say that. I have like an affiliate program. I get a bit of money when you buy dragon crystals to their shop. So that is very, very cool if you support me through that. Other than that, I wish you a great day. We'll see us in the next one.